Let's bring into the conversation journalist and anti-war activist Don DeBar is joining us on the line from New York. Don, good evening. Do you think what we're witnessing there now will put more pressure on the Bahraini regime and drive the anti-government movement forward? I mean, how powerful is this movement?
Well, the movement is powerful enough to have been standing up to the United States, the Saudis, and the Qataris for more than a year. You know, there's something interesting. Psychologists or people who study the science of psychology will tell you that the thing that distinguishes humans from computers, the most basic fundamental skills is pattern recognition. That's what lets a 4-year-old distinguish between a cat and a dog. You take the last story with the role that the United States is playing in Syria and look at the role the United States is playing in Bahrain when they've been claiming that they're in Syria over human rights, that they were in Libya over human rights, and yet they're suppressing human rights in Bahrain. It shows that President Obama and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton are hypocrites. They're liars.
Well, Don, it's funny you should say that, because I guess, therefore, you can help me explain what seems to be America's contradictory stance here, pushing on one hand for democracy across the Arab world, and then only a week or so ago we see US Deputy Ambassador Stephanie Williams visiting police officers in hospital there, while at the same time saying nothing about the dozens of civilian protesters killed in the anti-government crackdown.
You know, not only that, where's the outcry over Mr. Khawaja? You know, you have a human rights activist, a bona fide human rights activist on a hunger strike. You don't hear a word of it in the American media, not a word. Rather than having President Obama, you know, standing on national television and calling on the world to help remedy the situation, you hear silence across the board. And it betrays the interests of the United States in Bahrain, according to the people that make policy here, is to maintain the Fifth Fleet, period. That's it. The Bahraini people are nothing but people that are supposed to service that base and keep their mouths shut while they do it. Elsewhere, there's oil and other geopolitical considerations that prime U.S. policy.
And you mentioned Saudi Arabia just now. That's all in this melting pot as well, isn't it? America's key allies, one of them anyway in the region, playing a significant role in affecting events in Bahrain, not least by helping, as we saw reported, the brutal suppression in last year's revolt. How strong is their influence in Bahrain at the moment?
Well, they have military influence there, and they have policy influence with the government that is despised by the entire populace. The reason that they're involved, aside from, you know, being there as a proxy for the United States, is that democracy catching fire in Bahrain will eventually engulf Saudi Arabia, where there is no democracy. And when that happens, the Saudi regime will end up like Benito Mussolini, in a driveway upside down from a hook.
OK, well, let's look at where we are in Bahrain at the moment. People are still on the streets, despite the country's leaders saying, claiming to have brought in major reforms. They don't seem to be going down very well, these reforms. What scale have these reforms been, then?
Well, certainly not the scale that you had in Syria, where you had more people show up for a referendum under gunfire than showed up in the 2008 U.S. presidential election, and 89% of them validated the new constitution that was offered by Assad as reform. You don't see any referendum taking place in Bahrain at all.
Activist and journalist, anti-war activist and journalist Don DeBar, thanks for your thoughts there on the line from New York. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Kevin.